flight, AI-171, was one of thousands each year making the popular journey between Western India and the UK. On board, preparing for their 9.5-hour flight, were 230 passengers and 12 crew members.
We are at the airport, just boarding.
Awaiting them on the other side were their families and friends. It should have touched down at London's Gatwick airport at around 6:30 local time. It would have been a moment for so many to reunite with their loved ones, but that moment never arrived.
Breaking news coming in regard to a plane crash that has taken place in Ahmedabad.
242 passengers and crew on board that flight.
Those on board were 53 Britons. There appeared to be no survivors.
It was the deadliest aviation accident in India this century, sending a nation into shock and mourning and leaving families desperate for answers.
As details of the crash emerged, so many here in the UK knew those on board and simply couldn't believe what they were hearing. Here and around the world, our correspondents have seen firsthand the shock, the grief, and the struggle to make sense of this dark day. Gujarat, Western India. A state with a population similar to the whole of the UK. Air India operates a busy schedule between London and its largest city, Ahmedabad. The two places have close ties, and it's a common route for those visiting family and friends or working. Those were among the reasons why passengers boarded AI-171 in the early afternoon of Thursday, the 12th of June.
Seconds into their journey, the plane lost altitude. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner, laden with fuel, exploded on impact just beyond the runway. From afar, the smoke pointed to a tragedy of huge magnitude. From close by, the scale of the devastation left little hope that anyone could have survived. The dead, not just those on board, but also those on the ground.
I was sitting at home and there was a loud noise. It felt like an earthquake. I came out and saw smoke and the crashed plane. There were bodies everywhere.
Amidst the wreckage, the bodies and the reminders of the earlier normality of the flight. Food trolleys, water bottles, the blanket of a traveller. The Indian authorities say at least 290 people were killed. When Flight 171 fell from the sky, it landed on a medical hall of residents. The tail fin embedded in the side of the building. The dining room tells of the rush to escape. The meals abandoned as people ran for their lives, with the plane heading directly for them. This woman's son was in the building at the time. He rang her from the hospital to tell how he leapt from a second-floor window when he realised the plane was seconds from impact. As the Indian, British and Portuguese governments warned to prepare for significant loss of life, families arrived at nearby hospitals to try and find news of those they loved on the plane and on the ground. The British government has now sent teams to India.
Our hearts and our thoughts are absolutely with the friends and families of all those affected who are going to be absolutely devastated.
Investigators from around the world will now begin their work to establish how the Dreamliner came to crash, as those who mourn face the dreadful new reality of their lives.
That such an incident could happen within seconds of taking off mystified aviation experts. This was the first time a plane of this type had ever crashed. As we received more information, we tried to understand what might have happened.
The aircraft was a state-of-the-art Boeing Dreamliner with an excellent safety record. The flight was cleared to take off from Ahmedabad Airport at 13:39 local time. It climbed to 625 feet, that's just under 200 meters, when disaster struck. A mayday call was received by air traffic control. It's been reported that the captain messaged no thrust, losing power, unable to lift. That hasn't been confirmed, but we do know there was no further communication, and the aircraft crashed just beyond the airport perimeter into a doctor's hostel. So what might have gone wrong? Video of the crash offers crucial clues. Could this be a double engine failure? If so, that would explain the loss of power. One early theory was a bird strike, but there's no smoke from the engines, and such incidents are extraordinarily rare. Experts say that this video shows something else unexpected. You can see the landing gear is still down when it should be up, even at this early point of the flight, to reduce drag and to help raise the aircraft into the sky. And the flaps deployed along the wing to give the aircraft extra lift during takeoff seem to have been retracted, a possible cause of the crash, pilots tell us.
It's very, very unusual for something like this to happen. And if in fact the flaps were not in the correct position, that's a pretty clear indication of the reason that it was sinking instead of climbing. Now, of course, then there becomes the issue of why that might be the case.
As nearby hospitals became overwhelmed with casualties, the details of the disaster reverberated around the world. For British Indians in the UK, the news cut deep.
Almost everyone in this community has made that exact journey, flying to visit family in Gujarat multiple times a year. But it wasn't just shock that rippled through this community. As the news spread here, there was an overwhelming sense of helplessness.
And that feeling here in Leicester was echoed in communities across the country.
On days like this, it is silent contemplation that speaks the loudest. In prayer, they are remembering those who died and those left grieving.
It's been a very somber day. We heard the news coming out of India, and it's very devastating. So people are in a sort of vacuum, and so therefore they look to places like the temple to give them that strength and support.
Neasden in northwest London has the largest Hindu temple in Britain. The borough is home to a large Indian population. This evening, special prayers are going to be held here to remember those who have died. This is something that will be happening all over the country in the coming days. At this temple in Crawley in West Sussex, they're still waiting to hear if they have lost loved ones.
You can see there's not many people who've turned up today because they're still trying to understand whether any of their family members were on board.
Communities all across the country are feeling their loss.
Soon it became all too clear who had boarded the flight. Rarely in modern times have we seen such a large loss of British life at once.
Pratik Joshi had been working in the UK. He returned to India to bring his wife, Dr. Komi Vyas, and 3 young children to start a new life here.
Raksa Moda died alongside her toddler grandson, Rudra, and her daughter-in-law, Yasha Kamdal. They were from Wellingborough in Nottinghamshire and were returning to the UK after the funeral and cremation of Raksa's late husband, who died in April with cancer.
We are at the airport, just boarding.
Married couple Fingal and Jamie Greenlaw Meek ran a spiritual wellness centre and yoga studio in London. They'd shared this video talking excitedly about their trip to India just before they boarded today's flight.
Two 20-year-old sisters, Heer and Dear Baxi, had travelled from their homes in London to Ahmedabad to surprise their grandmother for her birthday. Their cousin described Dear as charming, who was always bound by family.
But on a day of horrific loss, one astonishing story started to emerge. It had been assumed for much of the day that there were no survivors. In truth, it was hard to imagine any other outcome. But then...
The miracle of passenger 11A, the sole survivor of the Air India crash.
An extraordinary moment of hope. A British father who somehow walked away from the wreckage.
It was the news everyone wanted to hear, that someone had survived. I visited Vishwash Kumar Ramesh's family who live here in Leicester, and when I spoke to his brother, he told me about this extraordinary escape. But whilst Vishwash's family now had some hope, they were still desperate to hear about their other brother, also on the plane.
When the plane crashed, he video called my dad saying, "Oh, the plane's crashed." I'm not sure how I made out of the plane. He was confused and everything. He's like, "I can't see my other brother. I don't see any other passengers or anything." Yeah. And we were just shocked as soon as we heard that.
Has he been able to talk to you throughout the day?
Yeah, a couple of times he's video called us.
How does he sound?
Sounds strong. And well.
How are your family?
Even though he survived, yeah, it's a miracle. Like, still worried about our other brother, my other brother.
And your other brother's name?
Ajay Kumar Ramesh.
Were they on the plane together?
Yeah, they were. They were both sat on the exit doors.
When did you last speak to Ajay?
I last spoke to him yesterday afternoon. He's like, "I'll see you tomorrow." Those were his last words to me. I was supposed to go and pick him up at Gatwick Airport today.
From his hospital bed the next day, after a visit from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Vishwash recounted the horror of the crash.
Emergency door is broken, my seat is broken, then I see the page little bit, then I will try to come out. A little bit fire, after me I'm out, then blast.
Vishwash's story remains scarcely believable, but it didn't diminish the stark reality that he was the sole survivor. In Ahmedabad, family members faced the anguish and pain of having to identify the bodies of the other passengers.
It is the awful moment the last shred of hope is taken away. For family after family at this hospital today, confirmation their loved ones were on board, their bodies loaded into ambulances and driven away for burial. But the fate of some families is even worse, like that of Akil Nanabawa and Hannah Varaji and their daughter Sarah, who were travelling home to Gloucestershire. Akil's cousin must now wait for the result of a DNA test after their bodies couldn't be identified.
We were very, very close, like he was like a brother to me. And, we had some big ambitions and plans.
And having to wait for the DNA tests, how much harder does that make things?
It's more cruel, it's not normal. It's not like, not a normal human being can see those bodies.
For the families affected, the uncertainty and the unanswered questions that surround it are only making their grief more painful.
And the pain was felt thousands of miles away in Britain. In Leicester, I spoke to Altaf Taju. His father Adam and his mother Hasina had been in Gujarat to celebrate Eid. They'd been on a video call to him the night before the flight.
I've just been to my dad's house. Not good. I went there. I sat in my dad's seat. I felt the seats. I felt where my mum sits. That's it really now. Come to.
27-year-old Hardik and his new fiancée Vibhuti, who was 28, were in India planning their wedding and meeting both families. Their friends were on their way to pick them up from the airport. All they could do was turn around and pray.
I immediately checked the ticket, then flight number, and compare with the news which appears the same flight number, and just we can't understand what we do. No one can believe it.
This morning we decided to set up a small shrine.
Hardik volunteered here twice a week.
We're like a family here, and it's like losing a member of the family.
Do you feel like they were just starting off their life together?
They're just right at the beginning of their new chapter. It's all come to an end.
Amidst the stories of loss in Ahmedabad, we found one more remarkable tale of escape.
This is my original ticket. It was 12th of June, EI 171.
Rahul Joshi was originally booked on the plane that crashed. He changed his ticket when a friend asked if they could travel together on a different flight. He flies home to London tonight instead.
He forced me to change my ticket, and really I saved my life. God saved me, and my friend saved me.
Such stories, though, were few and far between.
It was already a tearful farewell, but when Jayshree-Ben Patel's family saw her off at the airport on Thursday, they couldn't know it was her last goodbye. She was flying to London to begin a new life with the husband she'd married just 2 months ago. Today, outside a hospital, her family waited to receive her remains after a DNA test positively identified them.
She was really kind, really popular and down to earth. She was the pride of our community. It was the first time she was going to meet her husband in the UK, and she died in the plane crash. We are heartbroken that we have lost such an amazing woman.
They were among dozens of victims' families continuing their desperate wait for updates.
The anxious relatives of those who've died in this crash continue to gather both inside and outside this hospital. It is hot, it is chaotic. There are rumours that some of the bodies that have been DNA tested are to be released today, but there is also just a complete lack of information.
Kalpesh is inconsolable with grief. His younger brother, 15-year-old Akash, was not a passenger on the flight, but among those who lost their lives on the ground. A routine afternoon break beneath a tree near his family's tea stall, ending in tragedy.
हम दोनों ही भाई थे। एकदम से पांखे आता है ना, विमान का वो मेरे भाई के ऊपर आके गिरे। मेरे भाई वहीं से उसको लगी ना चोट, मेरे भाई भागने तो गया पर मेरे भाई को चोट लगी ना, तो वापस वहीं पे सो गया और वापस अकस्मात ऐसा ही हो गया। मेरा भाई अभी उठ नहीं पाया मेरा भाई।
Akash's mother tried desperately to save him, but the flames were too fierce. She's in intensive care, recovering from serious burns.
मेरे मम्मी को अभी पता नहीं है, मेरी मम्मी को पता है तो मेरी मम्मी भी हमको छोड़ के चली जाएगी, इसलिए मैं मेरी मम्मी को नहीं बताती।
For days, Kalpesh has been one of many caught in a slow and agonizing wait here, each passing hour deepening the pain.
कल भी ऐसे बोल रहे थे हम दे देंगे, आज कल भी पूरा दिन निकल गया, आज भी पूरे दिन निकल गया। मेरा भाई 5 दिन से अभी हमको दिखने भी नहीं देते।
This morning, that wait finally ended. The family inviting us to witness the moment Akash's remains were returned to them. An outpouring of pent-up emotion, raw and unfiltered, as grief turned to ritual. The finality of his death and the burden of that sorrow shared by his entire community, who came to see Akash's final journey through his neighbourhood and to say goodbye. His father desperate for one last glimpse of his young son, begging for his coffin to be opened so he could see his face. A boy whose life was cut short not in the air but on the ground, in a place he was meant to be safe.
She was the life of both of our families. She was the life of the community.
An older brother, a father figure, a best friend.
She wasn't just my niece, she was my everything.
Akil, Hannah and little Sarah were on their way home to Gloucester after a surprise visit to India. They never made it.
It's our mothers who are hurting, we're hurting. My father is hurting. He hasn't slept, he's been at the hospital, and he is devastated. All he wants is his kids. That's all he wants. We want our brothers and sisters and our niece to be with us.
It is a loss compounded by the torturous scenes being played out at the city's main hospital, where, like Akil and Hannah's families, relatives sit day after day waiting for the remains of their loved ones to be returned after DNA testing so funerals can be arranged.
In Islam is once you pass away, you bury them straight away.
But more than 72 hours after they were told the bodies of Akil, Hannah and Sarah would be handed over to them, they are still waiting.
What we were told was that there isn't a single individual body that's intact. Like, why is it taking 72 hours to process DNA?
No, I want them now. I want the British government to come now and help us, support us.
They say they feel utterly abandoned.
What do you think of the British government's response?
Appalling. Appalling.
What response? They haven't contacted me once, or they haven't even been down to the DNA centre or the hospital. And this is what hurts us the most. Give us answers.
The Foreign Office has told us they have a reception centre at a hotel. Not good enough, say the family.
All we needed was one central point just outside the hospital. We needed something there on the ground.
Akil's family invited ITV News to the airport as Hamza arrived from the UK to be reunited with them in India. He'd hoped British officials would greet him first. Akil, Hannah and Sarah's family say it's now imperative both the British and Indian authorities do more for all the families of the victims.
The black box and the cockpit voice recorder have now been found, and investigators are currently at the scene working their way through the evidence. But so far, nothing conclusive on what may have caused this crash.
Even if families get the answers they're hoping for, nothing can bring back what they've lost. Deepa Ben says she'll always remember her mother's laugh and how she loved to sing.
I said, no, she's not in that flight, she must be in another flight. My mind and heart was not believe me. But after 2 days, I thought all the negative phone calls and they no, need to do something, we need to do prayer.
Do you feel closer to your mum when you pray?
Yes, I feel closer to my mom when I pray, yeah, true.
What does that give you?
They give me the strength. I feel lucky, like she lived her life very happily. Yeah, I miss her a lot. She is my mom, always miss her. But we can't do anything because she can't come back and I'll always miss her. But we should pray and spread positivity.
I've been in Leicester since the crash, and what's really struck me is the selflessness amid the sorrow.
A priest told me that it's important for a community to come together and share joyful memories and have fun, but being together in sadness is what truly matters.